Hey, everybody. I hope and pray that you're doing well today as we come to our word from the word. And today, that word is permit. Permit. Now, you see that picture there. If you've ever been in one of those long lines, maybe at the airport or even at a theme park, it's funny how when you go, or even like the bank, you go and if it's empty, right, you still feel like, why are they making me walk through this maze just to get where I'm going? I know where I'm going to end up. So let me just get there. And as some people will try to go around another way and try to get to the front of the line, and some of us, we'll just try to jump over it, or especially the kids, right? They'll go under it or jump over and just don't want to take the path that's set before them. Now, the reason I say all that is we come to Mark today as we begin our journey through the Gospel of Mark. Mark chapter 1, we're actually going to look at the passage that we looked at, for those of you that were with us on Wednesday night in Bible study. It's that same passage. And I thought it was just another little focus we can have on that passage. So today, you're going to see this leper that comes to Jesus, desires healing, and we'll see what Jesus does and what Jesus says. And we'll tie that all into permit. Mark chapter 1, verses 40 through 45. Now a leper came to him, imploring him, kneeling down to him, and saying to him, "If you are willing, you can make me clean." Then Jesus, moved with compassion, stretched out his hand and touched him, and said to him, "I am willing, be cleansed." As soon as he had spoken, immediately the leprosy left him, and he was cleansed. And he strictly warned him and sent him away at once, and said to him, "See that you say nothing to anyone, but go your way, show yourself to the priest, and offer for your cleansing those things which Moses commanded as a testimony to them." However, he went out and began to proclaim it freely and to spread the matter, so that Jesus could no longer openly enter the city, but was outside in deserted places. And they came to him from every direction. Now, part of this, we'll see that the leper was not permitted to come close to anybody. As people came near to him, he had to shout that he was unclean. He was not permitted to go and join in corporate worship. He was not allowed to go because anybody that he was around would then be unclean. And so there's a whole lot that he was not permitted to do. One thing, him approaching Jesus, that's not something he was permitted to do. But he decided in that case that it was better to go against, to go against that rule, to go against that law, and to risk it all to go to Jesus, because he knew that Jesus could heal him. Now, his question was, would Jesus permit it? Just to stick with that word today, would he permit for him to be healed? He says, "I know if you are willing, you can cleanse me." In other words, he says, "God, I know." He says, "Christ, I know that you have the power. But the question is, will you allow it in my life today?" Thankfully, and especially as you look at leprosy, and we talked a lot about it Wednesday night, is how leprosy can be compared to sin, and the way that it spreads, and the way that it continues to grow and continues to destroy the person. But yet here, now you'll see that sin, that leprosy, can be not just healed, but cleansed. And we don't have time to look at it now, but if you go to Leviticus 13 and 14, you'll see that's why Jesus was telling him to do what Moses had commanded, right? What we saw, what we can read and see, and what this gentleman knew to be true in the Word of God. And it all had to do with the sacrifice of blood to atone for essentially what would be a picture of atoning for the sin of this man. Now, this whole leper coming to Christ is really an example of a lost person coming to Christ. Nothing in and of themselves was going to heal it. Nothing in and of themselves was going to fix it. It separated them from the presence of God. It separated them from everyone. But yet Christ did not run away. Jesus permitted the healing. And then here's the other part. Jesus did not permit him to speak about it. it says he strictly warned him. Now, it's interesting I again encourage you to read the whole chapter. You'll find earlier that as Jesus is healing those who were demon possessed, that he did not permit or did not allow the demons to speak because they knew him. Now, you think about it, the demons, and oftentimes you would hear them say, "Are you here to destroy us?" Because they knew that time was coming. They knew that they could not defeat him. But Jesus did not want them speaking about who he really was at this point. There was going to come a time for that. And even for this leper that was healed, we think, well, man, why couldn't he tell anybody? Well, you find out exactly why, because then Jesus' own ministry and his teaching was not permitted to go along as it had been because there were so many people coming in simply wanting healing. See, Jesus had a time and a place, and at this time, he wanted his words to be heard, and he wanted people to come because of his word and then receive healing. Wanted them to come because they had faith and then receive healing. But because this man did not obey, he actually ends up hindering the ministry of Jesus. See, isn't it funny that in all of our lives, there's things that we're permitted to do, and sometimes we abide by them, and sometimes we don't. Sometimes we choose when it was best, like this man, it was best to go against the grain and say, I know I'm not supposed to go near anybody, but I have the faith that Christ can heal me, so I'm going to go. And sometimes we need that boldness to say, no matter what society says, I'm going to trust in Jesus. Then we also need to recognize that there are times that, yes, Jesus doesn't heal in the way that we think. Sometimes he doesn't permit it in that way. And we just have to trust him. But then also, when he gives us strict and clear instructions, we need to obey them. This man ends up going and telling all kinds of, he says it freely. Wasn't like it just slipped out and he just told a few. He was telling it openly and freely that Jesus was the one that healed him. Now, there was a time that was coming for that, but this was not it. And then we find that today, we just ended in Matthew. Go back to Matthew 28, the Great Commission, to go and tell. We have been told, we have been permitted and even commanded to go and tell, and yet we remain silent. Isn't it sad that sometimes when we're waiting in those lines, like that picture earlier, that we want to jump right to the front when it's something we want to do? But yet then all of a sudden we'll act like when it's a command or something that we don't really want to do, we'll act like we've got to, at that point, well, I've got to go down every single little road. I've got to go down every single little line. I've got to wait and do this. And then I've got to check this off before I can witness. I've got to make sure I know the Bible. I've got to make sure I know what I'm talking about. I've got to do this and I've got to do that. And then we forget that he gave us a command. It's not just that he permits us and allows us to. We have the opportunity to share the word of God. Today, he's permitted it. Will you follow through in obedience? God bless you, and I pray you have a great, great day.